What's going on, guys? I'm a regular guy with the Regular Guy Firearms channel. Thanks for watching. Now, as the title implies, what we are going to talk about today are the fundamentals of shooting. Now, there is a lot that people overemphasize. There's a lot of military textbooks that overemphasize the wrong things. That's just a fact. I mean, anybody who's been in the military before will actually see that, and especially if they got into it a lot in the civilian side, they'll definitely see that there are some serious issues between what a lot of people view as a fundamental and and the fact that it's actually not. Now, let's get really technical here, okay? What is a fundamental? Okay, a fundamental for anything is something that is absolutely, positively, without a doubt, required to do what it is that you are doing. It is fundamentally important, right? So, in the context of shooting, whatever capacity that is, plinking, three-gun competitions, extreme distance shooting, gunfighting, whatever it is, you must have the following things in order to do what you're trying to do in the context of shooting. Now, first and foremost, we are going to go over sight alignment. Okay? Now, it sounds fairly simple because it is. It's how you align your sights. Okay? So, check this out. We have a set of sights here, right? We have a set of notch and post sights. Now, very common on pistols. This is also pretty much a sight picture for an AK of pretty much any variety. Okay? We have these sights, which are very, very simple, and I love these sights because you can be quite fast up close, and you can still reach out to pretty good distances depending on how far apart these are. Okay? Now, in order to do this correctly, this is with AKs, pistols, whatever. Okay? The rule of thumb that a lot of people have probably talked about before in the past is the theory of equal height, equal light. Now that's very simple because you have equal height on all three of these components. Okay, 1, 2, and 3. So you have your rear sight, notches, and then your front sight post. You have equal height across for all three of those components. And then equal light on your front sight. Now, that's how you properly use that. And the reason why I say properly use is because if you try to float this in the middle of these two or over it or anything like that, it's simply inconsistent. Now, if you give it equal height and equal light, whether it's a pistol or your AK or whatever other rifle or shotgun uses this, and yeah, there are some shotguns that use them, this is the most consistent. Now, you have different stuff out there. And a very common one that is used is a peep sight of some kind. Basically, it looks very similar to this in whatever form or fashion that it's used. It is used to where you have a circular rear sight, and then you have a post for your front sight. This will be slightly different depending on what it is you're using. Like, for instance, if you have an M4 or whatever, you'll have the little ears popping out, and all those really are guards. Okay, my Mac 90's got a hooded front sight post, and again, all that is a guard, but realistically speaking, this is what you're looking at. Now, the Peep Sight is a very exacting sight, because it requires you to replace this front sight post in the center of that rear sight. This, all that does is just give you a reference point for where that front sight needs to be. It needs to be in the direct center of that rear sight. Now, there's debates that'll rage on and on and on and on over stupid crap like this, but the fact of the matter remains. This is a very exacting sight, and it works for a lot of dudes. A lot of rear sights, the circular rear sight that is, will be smaller for greater accuracy, and for instance, in an M4 or something like that, you have a low light rear sight that you just flip over, and it gives you a larger circular rear sight that you can see more openly on. Okay. Now, that is as simple as it gets. Sight alignment is exactly that. Knowing how to properly align your sights. With optics and stuff, it can widely vary, but the fact remains is that if it's a red dot, if it's a quality red dot, just put the dot on a target and fire. For scoped optics, meaning if it's got glass magnification or whatever it is, 3, 5, 4 power, whatever that is, it's a separate whiteboard video. So we're staying on the iron sight and red dot category. So that is your sight alignment. Alright? Now your sight picture is slightly different. And again, this is also absolutely required in order for you to get your bullets to go from point A to point B. Okay? Okay, so as far as sight picture is concerned, we have to consider what that actually means. What that means is what things should look like after you've properly aligned your sights and now you put it on a target. Okay? Putting it as simply as possible. Now, what seems to be the overwhelming majority on the technique for this, and yes, there are others, but I'm just going to go over what I personally use. What I personally use is a focus on front sight method, meaning I don't have a soft focus on it or an intermediate focus on it, or I'm not focusing on the target. What I'm focusing on is my front sight post or the red dot. Okay. Now, what that means is this. All of your attention, for the most part, because our eyes have problems focusing on more than one thing at a time, is pretty much directly on your front sight post. Now, I've drawn this in this way because this is your rear sight and here's your target. If you are focusing on your front sight, right, these pretty much go away. If it's to the point where it's subconscious, pretty much any set of iron sights that you pick up, pistol or otherwise, these pretty much go away. They barely even exist in my vision to the point where I don't think about them at all. I don't even really see them unless they're really close to the front sight and obstructing my target. The target itself should be basically a blob. Now, right now, as you're watching this video, what I want you to do is, as you're looking at the screen, I want you to take your finger, stick it in front of me, right? Stick it in front of me, and then focus on that finger. And instead of seeing me, what you're going to see is basically a haze or a blob, right? Now, if you treated your index finger as a front sight post correctly, what you should see is very clearly your index finger, and behind it is just a shade. You know it's me, but what it really is just a haze as far as your vision is concerned. Very blurry. A lot of people struggle with this because what they're trying to do is that they're trying to orient their front sight on the target or center it. Don't worry so much about centering on the actual target. Center on the blob, because that is the center of the target. Really. There is no ambiguity here. If you center that front sight post in the center of that blob, those bullets are going exactly where they need to go. Alright, now this is absolutely positively essential as well, because if we don't have proper sight alignment, and if we don't have proper sight picture, We're going to get huge variations in our shot groups. One day we'll be shooting 1-inch groups with that AR or whatever it is, and the next day we'll be shooting 4-inch groups, and we won't be able to figure out why. It's because if there's inconsistency there, it breeds inaccuracy. Consistency is the absolute needed. It's basically what's required for accuracy, because what you're trying to do is emulate a machine with human input. Now, it's never going to be exactly to the performance of that machine, unless you're one of these dudes that does shoot 1 billion rounds a year and is paid to do so. But what we can do is that we can get as close to this as possible by focusing on things that matter. And those are the first two. Alright, so we have sight alignment and sight picture. The last absolute needed thing. Absolutely needed thing for your bullets to go from point A to point B is trigger control. And the best way for me to really illustrate this is with a handgun. Okay? Because now on most modern handguns, right? Most modern handguns are actually pretty difficult to shoot, especially for most people. They, comparatively to a rifle, they just suck. That's just the reality of things. Pistols really suck at doing their job compared to a rifle. This is also where most people start screwing things up for obvious reasons. Now, as far as trigger control and stuff like that is concerned, a lot of people get really wrapped up in really stupid things. Like, for instance, having a specific position of your trigger finger on the trigger. Now, as far as fundamentally, absolutely, positively unnecessary, unneeded, retarded, as far as fundamentally speaking is concerned. That is, now, where your trigger finger is in relation to your trigger control, that's a technique, and that's different. And we will be going over this here in a minute. But all it really is that when you, and I'm going to back off my hand here, when you touch that trigger, the first thing that you should be doing is every time you touch that trigger, you take out the little bit of slack that's there. Okay? You take out the little bit of slack that's there, and all it is from that point, once you have that slack out, that free movement, once the gun starts to get a little tight, you smoothly press to the rear. When the gun runs itself and when it cycles all the way, all you do from that point is just reset the trigger and then press again. Realistically speaking, you don't even really have to reset the trigger, because fundamentally speaking, as long as you press this trigger smoothly, those bullets are going where they need to go. You can, in fact, reset, go to full extension with it every time and then come back and still have your bullets go where they need to go. Okay? Because, for instance, ask yourself, how many times have people told you about the specific point of your trigger finger and stuff like that, and then yet you see shit like this? What portion of my pinky was touching that M&P's trigger? I have no friggin' idea, and I know that you don't either. It's the control of that trigger and the application of that trigger finger that has the desired effects. Now, if you don't have proper control of the trigger, meaning you're not pressing it and you're doing shit like slapping it, it's going to move all over the place, and you're not being consistent, because not a consistent amount of pressure is being added to the gun over and over and over. We're trying to emulate a machine. So if you do inconsistent things, the gun is going to act inconsistently, and that's going to affect your accuracy. Make sense? Now, those are the fundamentals of shooting. That is absolutely what is positively needed every single time for the bullets to go where they need to go. Now, we're going to get into techniques and how they're portrayed as fundamentals in certain ways, but we're going to go over how exactly they're just not. Alright, so y'all are just going to have to, you know, deal with my bad handwriting. But we have our absolutely positively needed things. These are fundamentals. Sight alignment, sight picture, trigger control. Right? We know that we need these things in order to get our bullets where they need to go. Because if you are missing any one of these elements, you're screwed because you're way too inconsistent. Now, what is construed as a fundamental on a regular basis by military textbooks, by coaches all over the place, by schools all over the country, is shit like this. Okay? People that actually make you believe that things like breathing, position, grip, and stance, and yes, these two are different, are fundamentals. No, they're not. And I will set out to prove each and every one of these utterly false because these three take over all of these without a problem. You can go without breathing correctly. Reason why I know is, how many of you have sprinted with a rifle? I mean, like paddle boated that shit. Just running as fast as possible, stopping, throwing yourself into the dirt, focusing on these, and hit that piece of steel. What breathing technique are you using in the middle of combat? What breathing technique are you going to use in the middle of a 3-gun competition when money is on the fucking line? The point I'm making is that you won't. It'll be horribly inconsistent, and yet you can still get your hits because you have these three. Okay? What breathing technique is used during this?
Move. You're safe. Move up to the next line. Ready? 2 kneeling. 2 prone. And 2 kneeling.
And yet we got our hits. Make sense? Position. This is retarded. Enormous arguments over squared up prone versus bladed prone. Same thing for kneeling. Holy shit, the 80 different types of standing positions. Okay? Yet, I could somehow get my hits with this. Or this. And what position does this really classify under? You won't be able to answer that question effectively because this is not required to get your bullets where they need to go. Period. It's not required. You don't need an absolute textbook example of a position. Again, anyone who has shot IPSC and shot on one damn foot while leaning someplace trying to hit that silhouette under time. Hell, even in training, where a bunch of green suiters are doing a live fire exercise, and you got like a boulder that you can use for a little bit of cover. So you like roll yourself over it, stay in cover, and you're still shooting. How many people got into a perfect position in the middle of combat during the Battle of Fallujah, and yet we kicked their fucking ass? You know what I mean? There is no relevance as far as fundamentals to positions. Calm down. Calm down, because there's people screaming at their screens right now about how effective shit like this is. But there's a difference between fundamentals, getting your bullets where they need to go, and shit like this. Okay? Grip. You just saw me shoot a pistol upside down with my pinky and hit steel. just fine. Okay, so that's not even relevant in any sense of the word as far as a fundamental is concerned. Stance. This is different from position because people get this really wrapped up in stuff like standing, where it's like boxing or bladed a little bit, or you get really low to the ground and crouch and stuff like that. Not required. Again, if you have each one of these things, your stance is friggin' irrelevant as far as getting bullets where they need to go. Now, to deal with these internet clowns that are about to cry all up over this video because they believe that they have been getting shit on for the last 10 plus minutes. I don't even know how long this video is right now. Okay? These are absolutely not required. Okay? However, they help. Okay? Proper control of your breathing and getting your blood flow to slow down assists you with doing this. Good squared up position behind a bolt gun is going to help you get your glass back on target, get a good follow-up shot, and if you're good enough, you can watch your own trace. Or you can absorb recoil, depending on what in the hell it is that you're shooting. Good grip with a pistol has you assume an offensive freaking control or amount of control over your handgun, and it allows you to run the shit out of that thing. And a good balanced stance will keep you alive when people are trying to hit you and shit or shoot you. These are techniques. They're not fundamentals. And that is where people get into internet arguments. Okay? Because all of these, there are a million different ways to do all of these. A million different ways to do all of these. That's just how it is. You cannot deviate from these three and do your job correctly or consistently. That's the difference between a fundamental and a technique. Remember, guys, a regular guy's firearm is the last defense against tyranny. Be easy.